Well, we have an unusual screen with Larry today because what Larry and I are going to do is we're going to take apart what took place with that Fed decision today, and also the conversation after. What the Fed chairman had to say usually is more impactful than the actual decision. That was certainly true today, at least with regard to what the markets did about it. And to help me with that, I've got Larry Goldberg. Larry, how are you doing out there on the road? I know you've been enjoying your road trip out there.
Yeah, Randy, I'm addicted to this now. I could stay on the road forever. It's a lot of fun. Met some really good people. Continue to meet, great Tesla followers. Did tour the factory yesterday, the Fremont factory. It was a very impressive visit. And right now I'm in wine country in Sonoma.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite little town. And off tomorrow to Lake Tahoe.
Oh, and then I think you're going to join your beautiful wife at some point.
She's here. Yeah, she's here right now.
Oh, she's with you now. There you go.
Yeah.
Very
yeah,
good.
she was with me in, when we were in San Francisco, in the San Francisco area, we were together. And so, yeah, we met some people last night. That was a lot of fun. So we have to talk about this continuing saga.
Yes. So the Fed spoke. They gave they made their pause as they promised. Some people are saying maybe not a pause, but a skip. And then Mr. Summers, it's Mr. Summers, Mr. Powell did his speech, and the market fell apart, and Tesla fell apart, and everything went down as usual when Powell speaks. So, first impression.
Well, Randy, what Larry Summers said, you mentioned Larry Summers,
right.
What he said about soft landings is, he said they're kind of like second marriages. They represent the triumph of hope over experience.
I see. Well, there you go. Well, so
so Larry, have you followed Larry Summers' interview at the All-In Summit?
You spoke a little bit about the other day, and and then but apparently this Fed chief wants to talk the economy into well, I think he wants a soft landing, but he seems like he wants to talk it into something more.
Well, firstly, Larry Summers says that never has there been a time when inflation is above 4 and unemployment below 4 that we've had a soft landing, that we haven't had a recession before we get a soft landing.
Okay.
He also said that, that really a year ago when it looked like we were at zero inflation and zero, growth, that, we kept the pumps churning, the pumps churning, that we weren't at zero. And later on, when we got to 9 inflation and, 5 or 6% unemployment, we weren't at either of those then. And he says, now we're not at 4% inflation and we're not at, 4% unemployment. So what he's saying, in a way, is not exactly what we've been saying, but it really reflects the fact that the figures, they don't represent the fact.
Yeah.
We've known this for a long time, and the Fed knows that, and they're flying by. Powell spoke today about how good his analysts are, and so on and so forth. His analysts are terrible.
Yeah,
shocking.
They haven't been doing so well thus far.
They've never done well, but it's an open secret because no economists have ever done well. You know, there are only two kinds of economists. Larry Summers said this actually at the beginning of his of the panel. He said there are only two kinds of economists. You know which kinds they are, Randy?
I don't. I'm gonna have to let you tell me.
Those that don't know that they don't know, and those that know they don't know.
I see.
What Powell did today was demonstrate that he doesn't know that he doesn't know. And Larry Summers is the first to say, look, I know I don't know.
Yeah, well, of course, the famous part of War and Peace, at least for my thinking, is that you can do all the planning you want, but as soon as you get into battle, something changes and the plans all go out the window, and you cannot know what the economy is going to do. And I say this so commonly to the listeners on this channel that, yes, I'm going to make a prediction about what Tesla stock's going to do. But of course, I don't know if there's going to be a pandemic next week that will definitely affect the stock. So you never know the stuff that's going to happen in the future, and you barely know, based on historical issues, what's going to happen, even if there are no surprises. And I think that's the biggest difficulty right now. We don't have anything historically to compare to coming out of this pandemic, where we so overinflated, we put so much money into the economy, and then we raised the interest rates so fast in order to combat it. There's no historical precedent for that.
And the other thing that there's no historical precedent for, and which may trump everything, is the extraordinary size of the deficit.
Of course.
We're in a world that we've never been in before. We're even eclipsing the scope and size, the growth of the size of Japan's deficit.
Right.
Now, Japan has this massive, massive deficit, you know, many times the size of its GDP.
Right.
We're heading for that, but we're heading for it at a speed that, you know, beggars where Japan was, I think. You know, that's the impression I have in my mind. I haven't done the numbers. So, I mean, to talk about raising interest rates further than they are now, I mean, they're stratospheric right now. They are truly stratospheric.
Compared to where they were, I think we have to say that historically, these are not high interest rates.
Randy, they are, because you are comparing so the interest rates in the late 70s were very high, but inflation was very high.
Right.
So real interest rates,
right.
Real interest rates were not that high.
Right.
I believe right now real interest rates are at a record level. And, you know, it makes sense given that the deficit is at a record level and the Federal Reserve Bank's balance sheet is at a record level.
Yes.
So,
but Powell was happy with that. He wants that real interest rate to stay at that level for another year or so.
Pretty crazy, if you ask my personal
I mean, he was really thrilled with that real interest rate.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I wonder where this all heads. It's not auguring well, and you know, I'm a skeptic, but by inheritance.
Okay. That's generational, many generational inheritance.
Yeah. Multi-generational, yeah.
So we're looking at the charts right now. We'll get rid of these charts here in a second. So we're looking at the 10-year is up now 66 at 4.413. This is the highest now in a very, very, I don't know.
Are you showing an interest rate chart? Because I'm still seeing CNBC.
Yeah, over to the right, the US 10-year in the green.
In the green. Oh, I see it. Sorry. Yeah, 4.413.
So I think, I'm not sure if that's topping what it was a few weeks ago, but it's at least close. I don't remember what the final top number it was, but it's very.
I think we've got to 4.56 at one point. That number sticks in my mind, but I could be wrong.
Right. Okay. And then we're seeing that the NASDAQ is only down 24 after, it didn't take it went down and as did everything today, but it wasn't a crisis. It wasn't a complete blowout that you might have expected with the hawkish tone that I think that Powell took. Did you think he was hawkish?
Yeah, he definitely did put a velvet glove over an iron fist. That iron fist was very present, ever present. And it's interesting because Summers, if you listen to him, he makes these very astute, observations, and then he comes to the point, and they ask him, what would you do that Powell isn't doing, or how would you do it differently? So I have to say, Summers is a hawk. He believes that we are going to have to go into recession. He believes that they're going to have to keep interest rates high. So he said, he first tells you how badly Powell did and what all the things he did wrong, and he kind of agrees with our principal analysis, or the principal analysis we have agreed on this program in the past. But then he goes on to say that really Powell's doing good now.
Oh.
So in Larry Summers' view, I think he thinks that we have to go through a recession in order to clear the decks.
I see.
I mean, he says it's inevitable. He said, again, he says there's never been a time when inflation was above 4 and unemployment below 4 that we haven't gone into a recession before we actually get a quote soft landing. So, and maybe Powell thinks it's inevitable and we have to do this, clear the decks and then get the interest rates back down through a recession, and then, refinance this debt, this gigantic debt. Of course, my favorite cri de coeur is, guys, you should have issued 50-year or 100-year bonds at 1% when you had the chance. Yeah. But
so Larry,
nobody listened to me.
In listening to Summers, because I haven't spent a lot of time recently listening to Summers, but I've listened to Powell now every month in and month out, listen to the rest of the Fed. There's two things they never bring up, and I have to admit, they're my hobby horses, and I hope my crowd's not tired of me talking about them. But one, productivity is one, and I talked about that earlier today. We can be pretty confident that productivity over the next 3 quarters is going to be pretty dramatically good, and that is going to have an impact. Are we in agreement on that one?
We're in agreement in that one, and I do worry whether this government is going to squander that away. I do worry. As bullish as the IRA is and was for Tesla, I worry about that kind of government attempt to steer or to, the last time we spent a huge amount of money, 2008, in the economy, most of it was squandered.
Right, absolutely.
And we've squandered about $5 billion, give or take. What's $5 billion? I mean, 5 trillion. 5 trillion. 5 trillion. That's right there. 5 trillion. We've squandered $5 trillion through this pandemic, business.
Right.
And now we seem to be squandering trillions, just as a matter of course. It's now no longer considered a problem, by both the Democrats and the Republicans. So,
well, there was a little bit of a fight going on right now. The Republicans are, seemingly willing to shut down the government rather than allow the spending to get much more out of control. At least some of them are. Unfortunately, maybe not enough.
Well, they signed on to the debt. They signed on to the raising the cap.
Right.
So how opposed can they be?
Well, Larry, the other one, besides the productivity, the other one that we have to look at, which they never talk about, and which almost nobody ever talks about, is demographics. And that was part of the Japan issue also. Japan wasn't just faced with the fact that they, got way out over their skis in terms of how they were spending their money as an economy, but they also had a demographic collapse. And while we've talked about multiple times on here that we're avoiding a demographic collapse in the United States because of immigration and need better immigration in order to keep that going, the truth is that the demographics of the United States, there's more to it than just having enough labor. We have an aging demographic, and the aging demographic has a lot of wealth. And so that wealth is going to be handled differently. In fact, I'm sorry, I keep saying Larry. Powell even talked a little bit today about the wealth that is sitting in the hands. And if you really think about it, it's in the folks that are over 50. It's in their homes, it's in their 401ks, it's in their IRAs, it's in their stock portfolios. There's a massive, massive, massive amount of wealth in the seniors or near seniors in this economy, which we've never seen anything like this before historically anywhere in any country, and have no precedent for it at all.
I'd have to think about whether there has been a precedent or not. I think in the UK, there was a huge generational wealth transfers. Huge generational, well, it was land transfers really, rather than liquid wealth. So maybe it's different. But
I'm not even talking about the transfer. I'm talking about the fact that the holdings are there. Again, Powell did mention today, he said, look, the balance sheets, the American balance sheet right now of the consumer is in pretty good shape. Bank of America has been talking about that for months now, that the balance sheets of the middle class are solid.
Yeah, Randy, when the government transfers $5 trillion into private accounts, it's really hard for the private people to, give away that money fast enough for it to come off the balance sheets. The generational wealth is interesting, but I'm not sure it's going to move the needle. People aren't going to spend that money. They're certainly going to have invested that money, and right now it's invested in stock, bonds
and stuff.
Very, very large number of bonds, money market funds. So that money is kind of it's not productive. It's not productive capital. Government is still spending money rather than people spending money. Look, there are the principal problem is our inability to measure what's actually happening in the economy. That's the principal problem.
In real time, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be real time. It has to be relatively close to the point at which you're trying to make a decision.
Right.
I mean, it could be a week late, or a couple of weeks late. It could even be a month late. But I mean, we are looking, quarters late. We're revising at the end of a quarter, and that revision turns out to be insufficient, at the end of the next quarter. So this whole, Powell talking about his excellent analysts, and these excellent analysts have the worst record. They actually have a poorer record than the general consensus opinions.
Yes.
That have proved to be more accurate, I think, and it'd be interesting for somebody to actually put it on paper and do an analysis now that he's made this claim. But in general, you'd think that they were measuring a different race. the race is on a different field and a different racetrack, and they're not measuring the same race that we're seeing.
So having said all that, what do you think happens in November and December? Do you think that this was as you said, a steel fist in a velvet glove? Do you think that there's I said it earlier today, so I'll just repeat it for you. I think there's a very remote chance that they will raise in November or December. I think it was a feint.
No, I think they're going to raise.
Okay.
I think on balance, I think they're going to raise. I think they are. I mean, if you listen to Summers, he would raise.
So Powell he specifically said, it's not going to help. He says, raising another 25 basis points after being, and then signaling that you're not going to raise anymore. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to move markets. It's not going to cause people to buy or not buy or sell or not sell.
But why are we worried about moving markets? We should be worried about, are we going to drive the economy into recession or not?
And are we going to stop inflation or not? Yeah.
The question is our thesis, the thesis that we floated a month ago on this program, that inflation is truly down in the 2% range? And if we're correct, then what we're doing now is going to actually crash the plane. This whole Larry Summers gives this whole scenario of the plane coming in hot and fast to land on the aircraft carrier, and it's just going to have to go around again. And so his idea is that we're running hot and fast. Our idea was that we're running slow and low. Now, well, that's a big difference between hot and fast and slow and low. If we're running slow and low and he's talking tough and he actually does raise the rates, we're going to ditch. If he's running hot and fast, he's going to have to go around again. He's going to have to drive it up and up and up. So if he's set on hot and fast, he's going to raise it. And sounds like Larry Summers wants him to raise it. I think we're already on our way down. But,
we have two more PCEs between now and November. So we have one next week and we have another one at the end of October before they make their decision in November. I've become such a fan of Truflation. I'm not sure, but I know that I think Powell's even mentioned Truflation at one point.
He has. He lost speech
last time,
but
yeah.
It's up a little. It's up
a little, but it's still 2.65 or something like that, and it's almost all of it is gas and oil. So that would not be in the base.
Have you done that analysis? Have you checked that?
I haven't taken it out. I wish they would. I wish they'd give us a
if it is all in gas and oil, then we're in serious trouble if they continue to raise rates again.
Yeah, so you can go through. I go through the individual ones. Yes, I do that all the time, and it is the food. What do you call it? Food and beverages.
Headline, yeah.
Sorry, food and beverage is also still a little high. But it's gone up a little bit last week, but only last week and only a little bit. But you would expect that because you're going to have an expense associated with gasoline prices going up and oil prices going up. It's going to flow through to food and beverages first. But you've got pretty much across the board. Other than that, I mean, health and education. You just go down the line. Everything else is in good shape. So I don't know where they're getting, other than the, what do you want to call it? The comparison to last year. This is where you always get messed up, is you have to compare it to what happened in that same month last year, month over month. And so that's what we had last month, is we had a very hard get in order to get it down to a good number. It's not as hard to get this month and not as hard to get next month to get it down to a decent number. Based on Truflation, you could see a PCE coming in at 2.5, 3.
Yeah. Well, if it comes in at 2.5, I think he's got to stay his hand.
Or
I
even
think
3.
he has to.
Even 3, I think. If it comes down,
Yeah, it's possible at 3. Yeah, and Summers is talking about 4 and 4, and 4 and 4 is a deadly number.
oh, yeah.
So we'll see. I'm hoping that the PC to solve the language. I think it's important, and then how we solve the federal spending problem and the federal deficit problem, I don't know. And it's going to take a much brighter mind than mine to figure that one out.
No, that one might take an actual miracle. What we can hope for is how do they used to say you have to grow your way out of it. You have to grow.
Well, your favorite hobby horse of productivity.
Yes.
Of FSD, the evolution, all of this stuff is not short term, it's medium to long term, if not long term to extra long term. It's very critical. And the more evidence we have, and the sooner we have that evidence, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not talking about the productivity from ChatGPT and these other things. I'm talking about the productivity in the difference between how unproductive we were a year ago. So companies could not be productive. When you're I was working with companies out in the field, last year that are trying to hire, trying to find people. You're spending all of your time trying to make do. You're trying to find a ship. You're trying to find somebody that will ship to you at a rate that you can possibly afford from overseas. You're trying to find an employee to fill that spot where the employee just left, and you're having to train the employee. So you're having all these expenses associated with hiring, training, dealing with people leaving, all this kind of thing. And your mind is not on how to become more productive. Your mind is, how do I keep the company afloat when I can't get product, when I can't get it in at the right price, when I don't know whether I can raise prices and people will accept the price raise. All of that is on your mind. You're completely distracted by those issues. Now you're not distracted by those issues anymore. So now now your people have been with you for 9 months. They're trained. They're starting to become more productive, and you can start letting go of the folks that are not productive. Those are the kind of productivity increases I'm talking about, and those are immediate. Those hit now.
Well, you may be right. So from your lips
to God's ears. Absolutely right. A famous old Jewish saying that
yes.
My entire beginning of my life. That's true. Well, any last thoughts on the Fed here today, Larry? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen tomorrow? Are we going to have another down day? Are we going to have you're going to have a down day tomorrow? Okay. Down a lot, down a little?
No, I think the market's looking for direction. I think it's as puzzled as we are. I think it's going to look for direction. In Tesla, I see a drift down until we get the real McCoy Cybertruck launch. I think the Cybertruck launch is going to evoke a lot of excitement. I think the numbers this. I'm looking both in terms of the announcement, in terms of production announcement, production delivery of next month, and then depending on how the Cybertruck launch is timed with the earnings call, that will. You will see the stock meander down.
Well, so you've got for the very first time in a long time, Troy Teslike and I are on the same page. So his numbers for 2 weeks from now, I'm fairly close to his numbers. I'm a little higher, let's say, on shipments, but not much higher on production. But he says record fourth quarter.
No doubt.
record fourth
No
quarter.
doubt about it. No doubt about it. And next year looks very strong. Highland is very strong. Highland's going to be very, very strong for us. Cybertruck won't be strong in the first 2 quarters.
No.
But production in the factories are looking very, very good in general. And that's all for factories. So yeah, next year is going to be good. But I'm looking for buying opportunities right now, and I am accumulating. I'm buying and I can take some opportunity to accumulate.
Yeah, well, I'm not accumulating.
This is not investment advice.
I'm not accumulating right now. I'm looking for the perfect opportunity to sell my June next year leaps. June of 24 leaps. I want to sell those. Hopefully, wait a little bit for a little downdraft, and then buy back 2026 leaps. So that's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, I don't advocate. If you're looking to roll over leaps, so you have to look at the individual, the actual thing, the Greeks on each of those leaps. But generally, you should do it simultaneously, because the risk in that gap period is very high, particularly in Tesla because of just
huge amount of every day so much. Today was really weird. I still haven't figured out why it went up that 2% there at one point before it collapsed after the
it's very difficult to tell, but you've got people with very large exposures, very large positions, and they have to settle those positions one way or another. And so these plaguing the stock.
Yeah. So last thing on my list for today, Larry, is maybe you've paid attention to it, maybe you haven't, but you've been around the markets for a very long time. So the SEC is doing a criminal investigation of Elon Musk and Tesla for potential use of corporate funds for perks that were not properly disclosed. I'm trying to imagine why the richest man in the world and a corporation with the kind of money they're throwing out right now would remotely risk any such perk, and why the SEC thinks that they're going to uncover. And the guy lives in a little tiny house.
Well, he does fly in a corporate jet, and he does attend fancy dues, and does live a very active social life. And it's very difficult to separate what he's doing as being, personal versus corporate. So it is complex. I mean, I've had some experience of this, and it's really difficult to, parse out everything you do. It's that way, and this will be spent that way. But look, I don't know very much about the law, but my impression is that all SEC investigations are, quote, criminal, unquote. So it's not as if, it's a big deal. I mean, it could be a big deal if something really serious has been done. But this SEC would love to pin something on Elon Musk. But Elon Musk's record in court cases, in litigation, has been bloody good. I mean, he was forced to settle with the SEC over the 420 take private tweet.
Right.
He rused that day, and so he is not going to go quietly into this good night.
Right. Yes.
Through this administration into the next. And so a lot turns on what is it has become de rigueur to use the law for political purposes in this country. It's a very sorry state.
Yes.
And, you don't have to be a supporter of our previous president to see that, and I am not, by the way, just tell you straight up, for the record, I'm not a supporter at all of our previous president. Didn't vote for him, voted against him twice. I just cannot support the use of the law in the way it has been used and the way it has consistently become used from in a political way. And I'm sorry if I'm upsetting people. I don't like talking politics that much, but this is a foundational issue for our republic. Once you start down that road, it's incredibly difficult to get back. Incredibly difficult to get back. And, I know people get really triggered by, some of these people, and they will resort to these things, but it is very, very sad when you do that. Very sad, because it just becomes, this rolling stone down the hill, going faster and faster. And who knows what happens at the bottom, because the amount of energy that is generated is gigantic. So it is very sad to see this happening, but unfortunately, Elon may be caught up in it. And, he, in a way, he has himself to blame for it. I mean, he bought Twitter and, threw the glove down, and now some people are picking that glove up.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I don't think there's any. I'm pretty sure. I'd love to hear comments from you all out there, but I'm pretty sure that there is no question that the purchase of Twitter has completely exposed him to whatever kind of techniques and methods can be used to try to get him to toe the line with regard to what people want him to do with Twitter, and not to allow unfettered free speech. I'm not sure what links people will go to get their way on that one.
Yeah, I think it's getting beyond Twitter now. I think there are forces out for his destruction, and he is vulnerable. He is vulnerable. I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to bet on this thing. So anyway, but the point is, he's been very resilient to these attacks in the past. I hope he can be resilient going forward.
All right. Well, Larry, you've got how many more weeks on the road?
Probably not more than another 10 days left on the road. So it's kind of, it can move around a little bit, but I'm going to be back on the road. I'll tell you that. I mean,
you've made that decision. More of America, more of North America, or
yeah. Well, we are going to Europe next year. We're going to spend some time in Europe. We love France. We do want to spend some time in Spain. We love Portugal. And there's so much exploring to be done. We love Europe. We love Europe. We're old school,
I got you. I love Europe too, but you didn't mention my favorite. I'm a big Italy fan, so I love.
Well, we've spent a lot of time in Italy. We love Italy. We were in Venice last year, and we love it.
Yeah, if for any of you out there, I don't know if Larry's going to agree with me. Probably the most impressive thing I've ever seen. It's made me cry twice, and that is the David. The statue of David it takes your breath away. There's just nothing. I thought the second time I would probably not be quite as goose-pimply, but I definitely was.
Have you seen the Pieta in the St. Peter's?
Yes. Oh, no, not that one. I'm sorry. I haven't seen that one. No, I have not been.
That would bring tears to your
Another,
eyes.
okay, all right. Well, I'll have to, that's certainly on that one is on my bucket list. Unlike turkey.
Good.
Turkey wasn't on my bucket list. I still don't think it's going to be. But boy, all of a sudden turkey, I did a whole show on turkey yesterday because we need to know now.
Yep. Yeah. Who knows? I mean, Elon may end up, I mean, he loves this country. He really does, but I don't know if this country loves him. Many do.
Many do. Many do. He has a great fan club. Larry, thank you so much for coming on. Enjoy the rest of your trip. And I'm glad to hear that your wife is now with you, because that's got to make it double the fun, at least. And we will be back together again Friday night, I guess, all things being equal.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
We'll have Larry back on Friday night to look at the week and review the week. Thanks so much, Larry. And to all of you out there, been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy. Take care.